There's this question floating out there. It's been around a long time. Is Salt Lake City a baseball city? Whatever that means. What it sometimes means is, would Salt Lake be able to support a Major League Baseball franchise? But the truth is, it's a more complicated question than that. Because it means, do we have the right sports culture or history or know-how to qualify as a baseball town? And back in 1984, the answer seemed to be no. That was the year the Salt Lake Gulls left the city. They were the minor league team here for years, and they were good, but for a bunch of reasons, like financial problems, they left. They went to Calgary, Canada. And one of the reasons was this question of fan loyalty. The Gulls would pull in maybe 2,000 fans a game, and it just wasn't enough. But then a new group of owners, a group that included the actor Bill Murray, by the way, saw something in Salt Lake City, and they started a new team, a team called the Trappers. And this is the point where the film The Streak begins. Because just a few years later, in 1987, this new Salt Lake team broke a record in professional baseball that had been in place for 70 years, the consecutive winning streak, 27 wins. Salt Lake broke that record on July 25th, and they went on to win 29 straight, a record that got them into the Baseball Hall of Fame and has never been broken since. The director of The Streak, Kellen Ikigami, and the executive producer, Tyler Measom, told us that everything had to go right to get a record like that, including having just the right kind of team chemistry. But the Trappers didn't start the season that way.
All of these players were overlooked, didn't get drafted for one reason or another, and they all come together to play for the Salt Lake Trappers. And they start the season with high expectations because they all have a chip on their shoulders, and they have to play against all these people that were drafted instead of them. The season starts, and it doesn't go well.
All of that pride and ego tempers flared up in the dugout.
I can't remember if it was Shady, somebody that broke out in a fight.
I think they start the season 3-3. Tensions are high, and in the dugout, the manager is like, hey, Frank Colston, who is the captain of the team, get these guys going.
And I said, what do you want me to do? And he said, I don't care what you do, Frank. I don't care if you have to turn cartwheels and wave pom-poms. You better wake this ball club up. So I go into the dugout, and I tried to do the old, hurrah, hurrah thing.
And one of the other players, John Leake, is like,
what are you talking about? He goes, you heard me. And Frank says, I'm going to tell you one more time to get up and start cheering, and I'm not going to ask you again. And he just kind of looks at Frank like, you're freaking nuts, dude. And Frank said, I'm done. Bam. And he clocked me. He just turned, and he freaking clocked me. And the whole dugout was just like shocked. Did Frank really just hit him in the mouth? Yeah, he did.
If there was somebody to punch, at times that might have been the right person.
You can see, and the character Leak is kind of a braggadocious, know-it-all, loud, arrogant player. And so when he gets clocked, it would normally cause a problem in the clubhouse, in the dugout, but it united the team.
John Leake, who played at the University of Miami on their national championship team, doubles down the left field line. Anthony Blackman scores 1-0 Trappers. Trappers also excellent in the field. Look at this double play. Shortstop Steve Scott to first for 1, throw to home Frank Colston for 2. Excellent double.
By the time that inning was over, we were winning the ball game. The skipper come by me and patted me on the shoulder, and he says, that a baby, Frankie, that a baby.
Weird things happen on a baseball field.
Then all of a sudden, we found ourselves winning.
What it takes to get a team motivated, to get them unified, it's not enough to have great players on a team.
The big blow coming in the top of the ninth.
They have to play like a team. They have to feel like a team. They have to be unified.
We became more hungry. We became more desiring. We became more passionate. And we began to do some crazy things together.
And sometimes it takes an odd clubhouse presence to do that. You'll see teams hang on to old veteran ball players who aren't hitting over 200, but they bring a looseness to the clubhouse. And I think that was a moment that really showed the looseness and brought this team, this oddball team of outcasts, together.
Of all the sports, baseball is the most magical. Sometimes it takes this weird awakening for a team to kind of come alive and go on to accomplish something that nobody thought was possible.
Every single one of these players was thrown together from all over the world. They never played together. They didn't know each other. So it took that moment for them to kind of come together. And what happened afterwards was magical.
This is Radio West. I'm Doug Fabrizio. Today in the program, we're talking about the film The Streak, which is going to open next week, next Friday in Salt Lake City. We'll have more details here in a bit. The film is about the streak, of course, and that story is probably enough, but it's also about these young men driven to prove themselves up against the expectations of culture and of their dads. A lot of this is about fathers and sons. But it's also about what makes baseball so special to those who watch it. Here's the film's director, Kellen Ikigami, again.
I grew up a huge baseball fan, and my family is a huge baseball family. Like both of my grandpas are big into baseball, my dad's big into baseball, my mom, my siblings, everybody. I was born in Japan, which is also a huge baseball country. And when I moved to Seattle, it was the same year that Ichiro Suzuki moved to the Seattle Mariners from Japan. And so that entire summer, I spent basically at the ballpark with all of my family in right field, getting, front row seats to watching the Ichiro show. And so when I moved to Utah, no major league teams, and I was like, oh man, how am I going to channel my love of baseball? Heard about the Bees, and my friend and producer on this film, Hunter Phillips, talked to me about the 25th anniversary for the Trappers. All the players came out, all the celebration happened. We were both talking, and we were like, that would make a great documentary.
When did you realize the film wasn't just about the streak?
From the get-go, the goal was trying to figure out an angle beyond the streak because, from early on, I knew the film was probably going to be called The Streak, and I knew that people watching it will most likely know they're going to break the winning streak record. Yeah. And so for me as a filmmaker, it's important for me. I feel so grateful that a viewer is willing to spend 90 minutes watching something I made. And I don't want to spend that entire 90 minutes having them watch something where they know the outcome and wouldn't be surprised by anything. And so from early on, as we were starting to talk with the players, the question I kept asking myself is, okay, how can we take it beyond the streak so that whoever is watching it can be surprised by it and feel emotionally moved by it by the end?
Tyler, talk about those two elements in the film. There is the streak itself, and by the way, it's great. Finding out how it played out and the way Salt Lake reacted and just the blow-by-blow moments in some of those games are incredible. But then there's something else that's going on. It's about how they were driven by a sense of wanting to prove themselves to the culture and their fathers. The question of whether Salt Lake is a legit, baseball town, the expectations that there are going. How are you thinking about all the stuff that's bound up in this film?
Who doesn't love an underdog story? We automatically root for these guys, and we automatically root for the town of Salt Lake, the underdog as well, who'd lost their team and put together these scrappy guys, a scrappy town putting together a scrappy bunch of guys. And, Doug, you and I have talked about this a lot, and I love Utah, and I love the lore and the history of it, and much of my films and my podcasts and my storytelling has to do with these legends of Utah being the lesser known, the little brother who's fighting for attention. And that's why we love our celebrities. And that's why we love anything that breaks through, that does well, that shows the world that we're not some backward state, if you will. And for a period, this scrappy little team made national headlines when it should never have. There's no reason an independent team from Salt Lake in 1987 was being visited by Wide World of Sports. But what it was, and that beauty of rising out of obscurity, both for the players and the team, made for a great story then, and putting it together now made for even a better story looking at it in retrospect. But it wasn't just a team. These were individuals. These were human beings with dreams and hopes. And to see what happens after. You know, so many people have dreams and never achieve them. I think a lot of people do. And for us middle-aged white men who look back and say, did I accomplish everything I wanted to do when I was a 10-year-old? It's hard to answer that question and answer it honestly. But for these players, it was more than just that season. They had lives. And for Kellen to decide, let's follow and see what they do now, that makes it relatable to anyone who didn't just play baseball or didn't just love sports. Anyone who, you know, may not have achieved what they did, or for one moment they had a time in the sun. And that's the beauty of this film.
Well, let's talk about some of the guys that you profiled. Frank Holston, he's the captain of the team. Tell us about Frank, Kellen.
Frank is the sweetest of people you could ever meet. You know, you think about baseball players or athletes, you know, they're big, athletic, focused, mean, cocky. And Frank, I don't know about 87, but today he's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And that contrast is what kind of helped me gravitate towards him, because he's so introspective and philosophical about everything that had happened. The way that he's able to articulate about his feelings and the experience and the emotions of going through the streak and then having to quit baseball was really moving to me.
So Frank is an outsider, as we learn in the film, in the sense that he was determined to play in the bigs. But the draft, and this is the story for all of them, for most of them, I guess, all of them. Like the draft comes, they're good. Like they're good in college. But the draft comes and goes, and they don't get the call. And there's this moment from the film I want to play where Frank is talking about what it meant when he didn't get the call. And he says it was a really a low point for him.
What was basically running through my mind was fear. The fear that I won't get a chance. I still thought that this dream could come true. I was pouring concrete one day with my brother, and when the phone rang, I couldn't believe it. A man from Salt Lake City had called me. And he wanted to know if I'd been drafted. I told him no. And he says, your flight leaves at 6 in the morning. So I just thought, yes, the dream was on.
Is that what makes up the Trappers? Is calls like that? Is you had guys who were putting together a team in Salt Lake City, and you're like, I think we can get these guys because no one Is that how it worked in some way?
Back then, yes. Especially for the Trappers, who were an independent team, they had to basically scout and hire all these players on their own. So they had to look at the college rosters, see who were the best talent that they could possibly find that didn't get drafted, call them and see if they wanted to play. And for most of them, if someone's going to tell you, hey, do you want to keep playing baseball? You're not going to say no. You're going to be like, absolutely, get me on that flight.
It seems like this is such a theme in the film. It's being on the edge of that dream. It's like they know in their heart of hearts they didn't make that first round. They have hopes. They know it's a long shot. But it is, as Frank says, it's that dream, right? I mean, that is the thing that is absolutely driving these guys, that there is some kind of chance for them.
Yes, and I think they have that chance, or they have that belief in themselves and that hope, because we're talking about players who played in college, who performed in the top of their league. And even if you're looking at college players, you're looking at maybe the top, less than 1% of the best players in the world at the level that they're playing in college. And so to be that good and that close, I think they had to tell themselves, they had to believe in themselves that they had what it takes, and if they got the chance, they could pull it off.
Jim Gilligan, who was the manager of the team, he's in your film, and he says baseball is unlike any other sport in the sense that it's an addiction. What does he mean?
For him, having coached a lot of the players, I mean, especially back then, of all the sports, I think, baseball, you're giving up your summers for it, vacations, time. Your parents are giving up their paid time off to drive you to different tournaments, and it's hard to stop. And it's this addiction where you just got to keep going, that I think a lot of the players related with.
It's interesting, too, and Tyler, I want to hear you on this. What did you all learn about what makes you great? Like, there are a lot of really good baseball players that are out there in the minors and the independents, in college teams. But the film gets into the question of what makes you great? What gets you to get called up to the bigs? And there's this guy named Larry Dierker. He didn't play for the Trappers. He was in the bigs. He played for the Astros, and you talk to him in the film, and he explains in the film that you have to have all the pieces.
It's usually speed, power. It's a natural ability, and you're missing one specific area, which doesn't mean you're not a great baseball player. It just means they can't project you into the major leagues.
Baseball is an extremely difficult game to play. Hitting a fastball, hitting a curveball, a slider, hitting a baseball is the most difficult thing to do in sports. And getting to that pinnacle, that peak of being a Major League Baseball player, not only do you get to play a child's game for the rest of your life that's fun, you get to be famous, but there's also a chance you could make millions and millions of dollars. But the law of averages says you are not going to make it to the major leagues. And I know guys who are the best players I've ever seen in high school, unbelievable players who got signed and, had a cup of coffee maybe in the bigs, played some AA ball, but couldn't reach that. The level that it takes to be a Major League Baseball player is far beyond many other professions. So I just think for these guys who really want to play Major League Baseball, and they take any shot they can to do that, there's a beauty in that most people don't have, that I'm going to do anything I can to achieve my dream.
Tyler Measom. He's a documentary filmmaker and the executive producer for the film The Streak. The film's director is Kellen Ikigami. He's with the Utah production company The Plains. The Streak is opening at the Broadway Centre Cinemas starting next Friday. Not this Friday. Next Friday, the 22nd. You can find more information on our website, RadioWest.org. We'll take a break. Come back in a moment. You're listening to Radio West. This is Radio West. I'm Doug Fabrizio. Today in the program, we're talking about the longest winning streak in professional baseball, 29 straight wins. It happened in Salt Lake City in 1987. The Salt Lake Trappers, a team at the bottom rung of the minors, made up of guys who didn't make the big leagues, who never had played before, broke a 70-year-old record that still hasn't been touched nearly 40 years later. There's a new documentary about the streak. It's called The Streak. It's made by a group of Utah filmmakers, and it's going to open in theaters next Friday, August 22nd. We're talking to the director of the film, Kellen Ikigami, and the executive producer, Tyler Measom. Let's talk about how baseball fit into the culture, I guess I'll put it that way, of Utah at the time. A man named Dave Baggett is in the film. He was the assistant general manager. And you've referred to this, but in 1984, AAA ball leaves Salt Lake City. This was for those who know, it was the Gulls, the Salt Lake Gulls. They were the AAA team. They were affiliated with the California Angels. But they left. There wasn't really great attendance. People were complaining about the facilities at Dirks Field. So they left. And I think there was the sense, this comes out, Kellen, in the film, people thought this just isn't a baseball town. So what What was the relationship with Salt Lake in baseball at this moment? It seems like we were down and out as a town. Is that right?
Exactly like what you said. 84, goals leave, baseball doesn't belong in Utah. Ownership comes in for the Trappers, says, you know what? We're going to prove you wrong. We are a baseball town.
Yeah.
And I think maybe the first season or two, they go on to win the Pioneer League championship. They are doing these crazy grassroots marketing things and trying to get people to show up. And they do. They prove that the attendance is really solid. And so by the time 1987 comes, they are expecting a championship caliber team. They are expecting a team that wins, and they're expecting a really good and fun time at the ballpark.
This gets us to the actor Bill Murray because he was part of the ownership group who buys the Trappers. What do we know about not just Bill Murray, but the guys Bill and his brother Brian, they're part owners. Did they think there was some potential here? Was it a passion project, a business opportunity? What do you understand about the ownership group?
My understanding is they are huge baseball fans, and they're kind of entering that peak of their stardom. And their friend Van Schley, who's one of the owners, gives them a chance to be an owner in a baseball team in the Pioneer League, independent, but still an affiliated,
It's a pro team.
It's a pro team.
Yeah.
And I think they can't say no. And they show up. Not every game, but as much as they can during the summers. They are flying to Salt Lake City. They are going into the ballpark, and they are trying to just live life.
Yeah. Just so people are clear, this was the lowest level of the minor leagues. And for those who don't know, there are teams who are affiliated with the major league teams. This is called their farm system. There's AA and AAA, and there are actually a bunch of layers. But the Trappers weren't affiliated. They were what they call an independent. And they were the rookie league. So that was the low. I guess what does it mean? It's like the low of the low, the lowest rung basically in the minors.
The lowest you can get. So if you want to look at the ladder, it's the MLB, the very top of the top. Then you have AAA, AA, single A, and underneath all of that, you've got the rookie league.
Yeah. Here's another moment from the film. You'll hear the sports journalist Wesley Ruff, general manager Stephen Pearson, Dave Baggett here. Here's another moment.
All the other teams in the Pioneer League had major league affiliations. Billings affiliated with the Cincinnati Reds. You had the Pocatello Giants. You had the Great Falls Dodgers, Idaho Falls Braves, Helena Brewers. They were all affiliated with major league teams. The Salt Lake Trappers were not.
If you're a player on an independent team, you're even lower than the players that have been drafted because the independent players, they never got drafted.
Were some of them older and probably should have moved on? You bet. But when somebody offers you a chance to play baseball, you play it. Because Major League Baseball, that's everybody's goal.
Let's talk about another player that you profiled, John Leake, kind of a braggy, cocky guy, gets popped in the mouth. Kellen, tell us about John Leake. He has this conflicted childhood. This idea of anger sort of comes up in his story. He had kind of an angry father. John comes out kind of angry as well. Talk a little bit about John Leake.
John grew up around Sacramento in a pretty tough situation, and his relationship with his dad was pretty strained. But the one thing they had that they can connect about was baseball. And so John and his relationship with father is so integral to his relationship with baseball that was kind of the story we wanted to explore was John. And John goes on to play in college. He plays for the University of Miami, wins the College World Series there, and he's one of the best hitters on the team. And the draft comes and goes, and he's not drafted. And he realizes, now that it's because he carried this anger when he played. He may not necessarily been a good teammate. And evidence of that is, with the Trappers when he got clocked in the face, and people are saying, yeah, I mean, if there's a guy to clock in the face, maybe that's the right guy. And so that's kind of where John comes from, is just playing from a place of anger with this immense talent.
Almost every night when Pete pitched to me, dirt claws, rocks. And that's how it got ingrained baseball, and it's always been baseball. I was a top hitter, leading the number one team in the country to the NCAA championship, and I did not get drafted. We had pitchers that never even played, very rarely played, but they still got drafted. I didn't know that, behind the scenes, they were saying I was a bad seed.
He said going to Salt Lake City gave him a clean slate. Is that right?
That's exactly right. This is it. He's got a black mark on him from his college days. Even though they won the World Series, even though he had great stats, there's a black mark. None of the scouts want him because they all think he has a bad attitude. And this is the one chance he has to prove to people that, you know what, like, that version of me is not what I can become.
I want to ask you about another player, Ed Citronelli. He's a catcher. And there's this kind of running theme, and I won't give away what happens toward the end, but a big theme for Ed is he's got this chip on his shoulder. We want to prove to the world that the scouts who didn't scout us, the teams who didn't sign us, they were wrong. And he says he was born to be a baseball player. So when you don't make it, your dream ends. So you kind of go in there with this purpose and attitude. But I wanted to ask about that, the sense of purpose. You want to talk about this story?
I think Ed kind of so perfectly captures that exact mindset we have in our 20s, where when we have dreams in our 20s, we're fresh into adulthood, we have this perception of what we're going to become and the things we're going to accomplish, and we feel this sense of purpose of, this is what I'm meant to do. This is what I'm meant to be.
Yeah.
And the really interesting thing about Ed is that where he is today, now he would say that's what he was meant to do, because he has that introspection. Mm-hmm. And yet I thought that dichotomy was interesting, where he can still also say, well, I was still born to be a baseball player, even though I didn't become like an MLB baseball player.
Yeah. Let's talk about Fergie. Let's talk about Jim Ferguson. He's sort of described as the heartbeat of the team. He's kind of this mysterious figure in many ways, for reasons we can, I suppose, talk about, but incredibly handsome, this guy.
That's the first thing everybody says.
Right? Like crazy. Yeah. Like there's this one photo where he's just sort of lounging with his shirt off, and I'm like, this guy's he looks like a celebrity, a movie star. He sort of looks like he has charisma.
100%. And I mean, all the players would tell you, I mean, Fergie was the most handsomest person in the entire clubhouse. And I think, I mean, rumors have it he guest starred or was an extra in a couple of different TV shows in Florida or something like that.
Right. There's a great moment where Frank Colston does something for Jim Ferguson. He doesn't think he's going to make the Trappers. I just liked this moment. I want to play this from the film, The Streak.
I remember the second last day of tryouts, Fergie said, Frank, they're not going to sign me. And I remember him asking me, what do you think I ought to do? And I said, that's easy. Me and you's going to go out tonight, and then you're going to work out with us tomorrow. So that next day during the tryouts, whenever he came to the plate and I was catching, I would tell him what pitches were coming. And at the end of the day, management changed their mind and they signed it.
You know, every game was pressure situation. I thought he was really the heartbeat of the ball club. Chemistry is everything, and it's everything in life. You know, it's certainly very important in baseball because you can have a group of real good ball players, but something's got to bind them together.
That was Jim Gilligan, also manager of the team at the time. And do you think that was it that chemistry that in many ways made that season happen, that chemistry that was present?
I think with a winning streak like that, it's a lot of different things.
Yeah.
In that, I mean, I think chemistry is the biggest part of it. I think if those players didn't have the relationships they had. They didn't have that brotherhood. I don't think they would have gotten as far as they did. Now, that being said, with baseball, you call it luck, destiny, magic, whatever it is. There's some element of that because it just takes one missed pitch from the pitcher to lose a game. Yeah. One missed swing. Yeah. There's so many different elements that could go wrong that you have to count all of that. But I do think that chemistry, I mean, I was on a text thread with all of the players for a while, and oh my gosh, they are texting literally every single day. I was like, I am a zero red text person, and I would have like 200 texts because they are constantly talking to each other. And from what I understand, it's been like that for decades. Wow. They just check in with each other constantly, and I think that was the magic for them.
They love each other.
They love each other. And I often wonder if that love and care they had for each other had something to do with that magic of the streak.
Help people understand what it means to have a winning streak like this. Some people may miss like 27 games, 29 games. Awesome. But put that in context, what that means, what kind of a big deal that is.
I mean, first and foremost, that is the professional baseball record. No one before and no one after had won 29 games in a row. I mean, right now we're watching the Milwaukee Brewers. They just won 10 games in a row. And that's an astounding feat. There's 162 games. And look, the old saying, Earl Weaver, the famous Baltimore manager, he said, every team wins 50 games, every team loses 50 games. It's that 60 that make the difference between, a World Series winner and a cellar dweller. It's very difficult to play the game of baseball. And you don't have the same quarterback every time, when you're out in the field. You have different pitchers. And a guy can get hurt. Your best player can get hurt. You may not have your best hitter up when the game is on the line. In basketball, you can do that. There's one shot left. Well, who are you going to give the ball to? Of course, you're going to give it to Jordan, right? But bags are full, bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, you're down by 3, and up comes the guy who's hitting 240, 210. You can't necessarily change that. That's baseball. So to win that number of games in a row is hard to really put into words for anyone who doesn't really appreciate and understand the game of baseball, how difficult that is. You could put together, if a professional baseball team went down to the minors and played 30 games, they'd probably win 20, 22 of them, but they wouldn't win all 29.
So the Trappers start to win. They blow past 10 and 12 and 13. When do people start paying attention to the Salt Lake Trappers?
From what I can tell, they start paying attention when they break the Pioneer League record. Because up to that point, it's still the rookie leagues. Nobody cares. Right. And so even when we went back and tried to look for archival footage, none of that exists because nobody's covering them. Nobody cares. They would rather hear about the major leagues. And so they break the Pioneer League record, and then suddenly they are, 10 games away from the all-time record. And now every game the pressure's on.
And what's it like around here, as far as you can tell? Clearly and by we I mean Salt Lakers, right? Utahns. We're paying attention to it. We're getting enthused. Whether we're a baseball town or not, we became one, right? What's happening around here as far as you can tell?
I think the best way to demonstrate it is when I talk to anybody in Utah today about this film and the Salt Lake Trappers, and if they've heard about the Salt Lake Trappers, they go on just I love the Trappers. I remember this. Yeah. I have this baseball cap still. I have the ticket stubs. I have all these things. I kept everything. I mean, the city's in love with this team.
Yeah. And Dave Baggett says this great thing. He says that the game when they broke the streak, they broke the record. He says there were 600,000 Salt Lakers who claimed to be at the ballpark at that moment. Everyone wanted, I guess everyone wanted ownership of that. It was mythic, I guess.
You find that with any major event. Everyone was at Woodstock. I grew up in Utah. I was in high school during the 87 streak. And as a diehard baseball fan back then, I went to some games. I did not see the streak game, but I went to games in 87 and it was everywhere. People were talking about it. It was more than just the baseball team. It was the Salt Lake does good. Utah is in the news.
Let's talk more about Bill Murray, because I love the stories about Bill, because as you say, he's here. He's excited. Duffy's bar, it's sort of the tavern where they all gather and they get free beers, and so they're there, and Bill goes behind and he's bartending. Bill was coaching first base at some of those games. Like, he was in the dugout for some of those games. He was invested in that team.
I think there is a part of him that wishes he was a baseball player. And so, I mean, he's a huge baseball fan. I think all of us major baseball fans wish that we played baseball in the major leagues, right? And so I think for him, this was, I mean, in a lot of ways, this was kind of the dream, that he gets to be with the guys who are playing pro ball and just completely ingrained with the team. But we knew going into the project that the likelihood that we're going to get Bill Murray was probably zero. And so approaching the project, we didn't commit to start filming until we can tell ourselves, yes, we have a film here. We have a good enough story. The players are so interesting that if Bill doesn't work out, we still have something great. And I think the film is stronger for it because now the film is so focused on the players' personal stories.
Kellen Ikigami, he's the director of The Streak, along with the executive producer Tyler Measom. It's screening at the Broadway Centre Cinemas in Salt Lake City beginning next Friday. That's August 22nd. You can find more information on our website, RadioWest.org. We'll take another break and come back in a moment. You're listening to Radio West. This is Radio West. I'm Doug Fabrizio. Back now to our conversation about the longest winning streak in professional baseball. There's a new film made by Utah filmmakers called The Streak that's going to open in Salt Lake City next week. But the film isn't just about the streak. It's also about what happens when the dream ends. There's a moment I want to talk about in the build-up to breaking the record. They're on this streak. Everyone's paying attention. Trappers win again. Trappers win again. And then there's this game. There's this moment. They're playing the Pocatello Giants. And it's not working out. They get into the seventh inning. What is it, 9-3? They're behind. And you tell this story in the film. Will you just talk a little bit about this moment?
Sure. They're in Pocatello. It's late in the streak, maybe the early 20s, and they're getting crushed. Something like 9-3 is the score. And in baseball, if it starts raining and they call a game and you're past the fifth inning, that's an official game.
Yeah.
And this huge storm is on the horizon, lightning, thunder, the clouds, they can see it moving towards the stadium. And the announcer announces the streak is over.
As I'm walking to the dugout, in the northeastern sky is a double rainbow, a double one. And here come the sun.
It was like, hey, the baseball gods are giving you one last shot.
The crowd started cursing at the announcer because they felt that he jinxed the game.
But their third baseman looked at me and says, how could he say that?
Frank Colston and Jim Ferguson came into the dugout, and they both came and said, this is our only shot.
Jim would not permit nor allow a ball club to lay down. He just didn't have that in him.
And we huddled in the dugout, and this is what we said. Here we go.
The pitch belts it to deep left center field. Back to a warning track. It is. It's gone.
And they just start hitting bombs after bombs after bombs, and they make a comeback. Man, I think that was the moment when the players were like, well, it feels, it's meant to be and it's meant to be. They can't explain it any other way.
We should mention not one player made it to the majors from the Trappers. Some of them signed contracts with affiliated minor teams, but none of them ever got called up to the bigs. Larry Dierker, we were talking about him earlier from the Astros. He's in the film, and he says something that I wanted to ask you both about. He says that the fact that they never made it to the bigs, he says it proved the scouts were right. And I guess what he meant by that is they weren't good enough. What do you guys make of that?
When Larry said that, I was like, how else do you describe it than a gut punch? But I think it was that gut punch of that reality setting in that we get to go on this crazy ride of the winning streak of the greatest thing they've accomplished in their baseball lives. Yeah. And for them to not make it to the major leagues, I really wanted to raise the stakes and have people understand just how gut-punching it is for the scouts to be right. For even though they've done something amazing, for them to not make it is crushing for them.
But on the flip side of that, there's a lot of players that made it to the major leagues. But how many of them can say that they were part of baseball history?
Yeah. And also, Wesley Huff says something in the film. He's the Utah sportscaster who was covering this at the time. He's in the documentary, and he says it showed something about sports that a team isn't just individual players. He said it was a situation, the Trappers, where it was the sum seemed to be greater than the parts, and I really liked that idea.
I did too. It kind of just again defines that brotherhood is they get to experience this thing together that they couldn't have done on their own.
A big part of the film is what happens after, as Frank says, but then we blinked. We had this dream and then we woke up, right? And then they go on and they live their lives, and we see what happens in their lives. And the film kind of shifts here. Kellen, I wanted to talk to you about your interest in the Japanese players who were on the Trappers team. Koichi Ikeue, and Yashiro Hiyama.
Yeah, Yasuhiro Hiyama.
Sorry. Koichi is really interesting because he does talk about what I identified as this really powerful theme in the film, and that is fathers and sons. I mean, Koichi says this really beautiful thing. He says he thought that if he didn't play baseball, he would cease to exist. And there's a moment after when you go to Kobe, Japan. Will you talk about that, by the way, and that experience? Because we see Koichi questioning whether he was successful and never being able to live up to his father's expectations. We see the same thing with John Leake, but will you talk about that as a theme?
Yeah, I think that was one of the most interesting things about working with the Japanese players, because I thought same sport, baseball in Japan, baseball in America. Culturally, completely different. And yet, Koichi and John come together and have this universal experience of having a complicated relationship with their fathers, especially in relation to baseball.
Yeah. Sorry if this is a dumb, obvious question since you're Japanese, but it must have been meaningful to connect with that part of these players in your own experience. Is that a fair question?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like being Japanese and loving baseball are such core parts of my identity that, I mean, honestly, like as soon as I found out that the 1987 Salt Lake Trappers, they had Japanese players, that is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I was like, we need to track them down and see where they're at, because again, going back to the chemistry thing, you're talking about two guys who they've never traveled outside of Japan. Yeah. They're like 19 years old, comes to America, pitch for this team, doesn't speak the language. Crazy story.
Yeah. There's a moment I want to play toward the end of the film with John Leake. And he's working with his son. So John Leake has had this conflicted relationship with his father because his father has all these really high expectations for sports. And so we see John throwing a ball with his kid. And he's trying to talk to him about how baseball is great, and he's trying to downplay his kid's obvious interest in lacrosse. What are you seeing there? And by the way, it's incredible that you were able to capture that.
I mean, a lot like baseball, documentary filmmaking, lots of serendipity.
Yeah.
And that was one of those moments when I heard them talk about that. I was like, that is the most bizarre conversation and so interesting because it says everything about their relationship.
Yeah.
And his son's reaction is just so sweet and diplomatic. And yeah, I love that moment.
Here's the moment I want to play. They go to his son's baseball game, Little League baseball game. And John is standing there watching the game with his wife. Let me play it and let's talk about it.
You know, when he didn't swing the bat his first time up, I'm like, Grandpa Roy would have ripped my head off. And I always think of that, you know. And it's not, you got to keep it positive. I just got to get him to have a favorite player. I think that's the key.
Maybe it could be you.
That's true. That is, I mean, I don't know a lot about lacrosse, but Tucker definitely could be a baseball player. But I just was wondering how you'd feel if to actually try to go up to Cooperstown and check out our memorabilia that's up there. No, seriously, I'm serious.
I'm in.
Oh, okay, well, really?
Yeah. I think it might even help motivate this little guy here.
Yeah, I
Seeing
mean,
you
whatever.
doing the same things he's doing.
That's one reason I want to go up there, just so I can show you that.
That you were once athletic?
Yeah, I'm just a shell. Just a shell, but.
I love this moment from the film. All these expectations on this young baseball player. There's a lot going on in this moment, don't you think?
Yeah, and what I wasn't able to explore as much in the film is his wife is actually, she was an all-American lacrosse player. Yeah. Like, this kid comes from two lineages of crazy athleticism, and that choice between baseball and lacrosse is a huge deal. And John's just trying his best to not be his dad, to be so forceful. And I think for me, when I was making the film, Bruce Springsteen's music was a huge guide for this film. But specifically his book, Born to Run, there's a quote where he's talking about his relationship with his father. And he mentions something along the lines of how, you know, once his father passed away, that was kind of a ghost that haunted him. And what we need to do is to turn that ghost into our ancestors who walk next to us. And that was kind of, especially with Koichi and John's relationship with his fathers, that was something I really wanted to convey because they were both so haunted by their fathers. And how do they find some peace? And especially with John, how does he not become that ghost for his son was something that was really interesting to me.
Do people still talk about the streak?
No.
I mean, we're almost 40 years away from it.
Yeah. And it's again like minor leagues. It's just so buried that people don't know about it and aren't excited about it as much as, it's like Tyler said, 40 years. That's a long time.
And this comes up. Huey Lewis, of all people, talks about how there shouldn't be an asterisk here. People are like, "Oh, it's the minors." I mean, they managed to win 29 straight. But it shouldn't be an asterisk there. And maybe that's why people don't think about it. But also, sorry, this is Salt Lake. We don't have a major league team yet, and so that whole idea of us wanting to be up there, thought well of, in the sports world. That's there too in some ways, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I like to think that, having worked on this documentary, that like if we were to get a major league team, people will show up for it. And it really is this love letter to baseball in Utah.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Kellen Ikigami, he directed The Streak. Tyler Measom is the film's executive producer. The film opens next Friday. Not this Friday, next Friday, August 22nd at the Broadway Centre Cinemas. If people go see it, it will last longer at the theater, so go see it. You can find more information on our website, RadioWest.org. Radio West is a production of KUER. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube at KUER 90.1. We're on Instagram at Radio West, and you can email us at radiowest@kuer.org. The program is produced by Benjamin Bombard and Tim Slover. Kerry Watson is our executive producer. I'm Doug Fabrizio.